Welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Jake Gordon and Alex Lord. The Falcons host the Packers in a I don't want to say critical, but a big week 2 matchup. At two teams 1-0. There was a lot of question marks about both.
I'll say it's a big matchup. This is a good litmus test.
I think it's these next 3 weeks. I wrote an article about it. Go check it out on sportstalkatl.com. These next 3 weeks for the Falcons, I mean, you look at the schedule as a whole, it's weak, but you get the Packers this week, you get the Lions, then you get the Jaguars. Like, we're going to figure out how good this Falcons team, and it starts this week with the Jordan Love-led Packers. Alex, you were a Packers fan. You know everything about this organization, the ins and outs. Now you cover the Falcons. So give us a breakdown on what we should expect from this Green Bay team coming into Atlanta on Sunday afternoon.
A lot better offense. I expected a little bit more from the Panthers offense. They were scattered. They didn't really have a plan. They didn't try and take the top off the defense at all. And maybe DJ Shark's absence had something to do with that. Maybe the lack of protection. And honestly, I don't know exactly where they're going with Bryce Young. I gave Frank Reich a lot of props in the offseason, and that did not look good. That is not going to be the case this week. Matt LaFleur is one of the best play designers, one of the best play callers in the National Football League. It's going to look a lot smoother, and it's going to look like the Packers actually have a plan. Similar to Arthur Smith, and he uses a lot of misdirection. He uses a lot of motion. Your eyes, the Falcons' defensive eyes, are going to be important this week, and sticking to your reads, because the Packers are going to have a lot of, window dressing, and you have got to stay in your lanes. They're not going to run at the Falcons' interior defensive line, which is certainly a strength. They're going to try and push the edge, which is like a zone look. The big thing here is if Aaron Jones is going to be healthy or not. He's still a top 10 running back in this league. He's the engine in that Packers offense. Everything builds off that, similar to what the Falcons kind of do with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. Offensively, it's going to be a much different game. Looking back to the Packers week 1 win over the Bears, I said it. I maybe not said it on here. I said it to multiple people who asked. The Packers were underdogs in that game, and a lot of people are crowning the Packers as like, they're great. That's exactly who I thought the Bears were, and this is exactly who I thought the Packers were. The Packers looked a lot better. Yeah, the Packers looked a lot better than people were giving them credit, but they still beat a terrible Bears team. And I think the same can be said for the Panthers and Falcons game last week. The Falcons beat a pretty bad Panthers team. This should be a really, really good game. The Packers offense is going to be a good test for this new look Falcons defense that we're all very, very high on. Not just us, the whole national landscape. All the national talking heads are talking about the Falcons defense. So this will be a great test. Jordan Love looks like he's the guy there, the next franchise quarterback. This will be a great test for Ryan Nielsen and the new look defense.
Yeah, and I have a little perspective on this too as part of ownership for the Packers. I paid my $250. I've kind of learned to love the team too. I find myself like secondarily rooting for the Packers. Like, it started out as a bit, but I like watching them. They're usually on TV too. They're a big time brand, big market. But yeah, you're right. It's going to come down to if Aaron Jones is playing or not. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Christian Watson, another guy who I was super high on coming out of the draft. I said he would be the next Mike Evans. He kind of showed that a little bit last year. He caught like 6 touchdowns in 3 games or something. He went crazy for like a short spurt. He's a really good player. He's also questionable on the defense. My guy, big play Quay, had a pick 6 last week. He might not play. But they're getting some big leaps out of these younger guys. Like Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt had pretty mediocre rookie years last year, and both of them look really good week 1. Rashawn Gary looks like he's going to be like a top 5 edge rusher in the league. They still have Jair Alexander. They still have Darnell Savage. Like, they got dudes. That's the thing. And it's like, I said this before. I think them and the Falcons, they kind of follow a similar recipe. And I think the Packers just have better ingredients right now. They just got better players.
Yeah,
the Packers are similar. The Jimmies and Joes are probably leaning towards the Packers, but it's not as big of a gap as it used to be. Last year, this would have been a murder, but I think the Falcons have closed that gap. And since they're at home, I do think they can win the game. It's going to come down to Desmond Ridder versus Jordan Love and which quarterback makes more mistakes.
The Falcons' offensive line had a rough go at it. And that's not to say they're a bad group, because Derek Brown, I said he was one of the best interior defenders in the league. He might be up there with Chris. I mean, he was unstoppable. He was throwing Chris Lindstrom, who had a good game, around like a rag doll. Chris Lindstrom's one of the best guards in football, and he was throwing him around like a ragdoll. Brian Burns, also one of the best edge rushers in football. It's not going to get any easier this week. Kenny Clark's a dude. Drew Dahlman's going to have his hands full with Kenny Clark. Devontae White, like you said, he's not even close to Derek Brown, but still an ascending player. Rashawn Gary's already there. Coming off an ACL injury, already looks like a dude. He is on a snap count, so maybe that kind of helps the Falcons. But Caleb McGarry's got to have a much better game this week than he did last week. And like you mentioned in the secondary, their weak point is the safeties. How Arthur Smith is going to attack them, I'm not exactly sure. Zahir Alexander, lockdown corner, top 5 guy.
It's not a great recipe when you have a quarterback that doesn't really go deep a lot. So.
Yeah, that is a problem. I don't know how they're going to attack them. A lot of tight ends, a lot of running backs is what I would suggest. But this defense is as good as the Panthers. It's going to be a big test for this Falcons offensive line.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the key. I mean, can the Falcons go downfield? Because there's only a few teams. I think the Falcons can win a lot of games playing the way that they did last week with this schedule. And I think running the football for 150 yards and not turning the ball over and playing defense is going to win you a lot of games in the National Football League, no matter what your schedule looks like. But against a team like the Packers, against a team like the Lions, against a team like the Jaguars, like they're eventually going to have to throw the ball down the field and let it loose. And more than anything, whether those passes are complete or not, give the threat that they can throw the ball down the field. Because as you saw with the Panthers, they didn't have any threat. And if you do that against this Packers defense and you basically say, hey, we're not going to take shots down the field, we're going to try to play this game in like a half-court offense, you're going to find yourself in trouble against good defenses. And I think the Packers, especially with film study and stuff, if they watch what they watched last week, they're going to play it like that. So Arthur Smith's going to have to open up the playbook. He's going to have to give Desmond Ridder a few shot plays. And if he doesn't, I think the Falcons are going to have trouble scoring. I think they're going to have even more trouble scoring because now the book's out. Now the book's out on what they're trying to do. Now that they're not trying to stretch the safety. So I'm interested to see if they do that. And the biggest thing I think in that, as you talked about it, is the pass protection. Like, we have to pass protect better. I think we are going to pass protect better. I think we are better than we were last week. But you got another big test here, and you got to pass protect because as bad as Ridder was and as much as they kept him in a box, I think they tried to open things up a little on that first drive. And it was like pressure, sack. Like there was nothing there for him. So they just kind of went away with that and went away from that. So I think a big thing is trusting Ridder, trusting that offensive line and taking some shots early in the game to at least keep the defense honest. If they don't do that, whether they complete them or whether they don't, if they can't do that, I think they're going to find themselves in some trouble in this matchup.
Yeah, and this is why I call this a good litmus test, because this is a team that is clearly better than you. And not only are they better than you, they're better than you at what you like to do for the most part. Jordan Love is definitely a far superior downfield passer. I think Christian Watson and Drake London are comparable in terms of like the type of threat that they are. But I agree with you, Chase. Like, you have to at least try. Like, you got to give it a shot. You can't, like, the Giants are a team that last year they ugged up a lot of games. They made it ugly. They made it, they kind of turned it into a rock fight. But Daniel Jones is like a very underrated, like, unique runner. Like, Desmond Ridder doesn't really have that. They don't really have all the dimensions that Giants just like ugly style of football. And that's not to say they can't win games like that, but they have to make some throws downfield. If they don't, it's going to turn into, okay, well, we went 10-7 and then we didn't beat a single good team. And that's kind of what I think it'll look like at the end of the year if they really can't start passing downfield.
I think that goes for both ways. The Falcons have got to, open up the offense a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot. Stick to what you're good at. I mean, but in terms of the Falcons defense, it's going to look much different this week. I mean, Jordan Love has the ability to make throws that Bryce Young did not because of his pass catchers and because of his protection. And honestly, Jordan Love's arm is probably a little bit better than Bryce Young. Whether the rest of his stuff is there is yet to be determined. But Jordan Love has got it. He's definitely got it. And I think those are the four biggest things. The line of scrimmage, it's going to be like that every single week. The line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball for the Falcons, and whether you can protect against the deep pass and whether you can attack the Packers deep.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited for this week because I think we find out a lot about the Falcons. I mean, we saw them win ugly. Maybe they win ugly again, but they're up against a much better team on both sides of the ball. I'm really excited to see how this shakes out and these next 3 weeks shake out. Coming up after the break, the Hawks didn't want to include this player in the trade for Pascal Siakam.